Somebody asked me yesterday, out of the genuineness of their heart, I don't know if it's a word, but they were white and they said, genuinely asking, how come the people who did not enslave Africans, the people who don't, never agreed with racism, those white people, how come they have the responsibility to end racism when they didn't come from those families, basically? And what I wanted to say was, in a way, it's like how I'm a black woman. And back in the day, a lot of black women, even though it wasn't me, a lot of black women joined with the white women to separate themselves from the men. So black women separate themselves from black men. Today, you can see that the relationship between black men and black women are very rocky because now men are holding women accountable for what women did at that time. And even though I'm not the same woman that made that choice, I am still a black woman. So I relate. And I apologize to all black men for that action. Another example, when scientists were telling humanity, stop littering, stop polluting, ozone layer, global warming. And even though I'm not the type of human that would just go and throw trash outside and litter or, drive all day just for nothing, polluting the air, I take accountability as a human for humanity. I continue doing what I'm doing, which is I care about my environment. I speak to black men. I compliment them. I make sure I speak to the sun. I do things out of my way just so it don't look like I'm going that direction. So when non-prejudiced white people feel some type of way about black people speaking out against racism, it's natural to feel some type of guilt. But what y'all need to keep in mind is that if you hate racism too, and you looked up who invented racism, how did racism become established, you will see that it goes back to white people. And when you look at what's still going on today and you see that black people didn't eat white people, black people didn't create a menu of eating white people. Black people don't have sun up towns and kill every white person and whoever that enters that town. Black people never created a system a racist system to keep the generations enslaved. We never did that to white people. So when you look at the things like that and you see, well, the Asians aren't doing that, the Chinese aren't doing that, the Russians aren't doing that, and you see that white people are the only people that are systematically carrying on racism, and every other person has picked up their ways because they put out the beauty standard for everybody to copy. And if they didn't, off. It was either white or it ain't right. When you think about how people are, just flabbergasted that Jesus is black. I don't even believe in Jesus, but Jesus is black. When you think about that, you think, why would that surprise you? Why does it matter what color God is, right? Well, it mattered to somebody because they changed it. And now that it's been changed back, you're going to hell for saying that. God ain't black. God has no color. Then why you paint him white? It's certain things you have. That's why. Because white people, the way that they came together and invented racism, the way they came together and promoted racism and spread it out and passed it down through generations so they can start that generational wealth. When you see that pattern in white people, you have no choice but to acknowledge, damn, we really fucked up. And then you have to realize, I'm glad I ain't fucked up. Fuck y'all. If you hate racism as much as black people hate racism, or Asians hate racism or whatever, then you really don't have a problem. If you hate racism, you really don't have a problem with the person who is talking against racism. It just makes you feel uncomfortable because that racist person is white. But you have to remember, there were other white people who were fighting against racism. That's who you represent. You represent the white people who helped us make it through the Underground Railroad. You represent the white people who don't care to be called no nigga lover. So what? I love niggas. You know, you see color and you still treat that person equally. Because if you don't see color, you ain't ignoring that person's, you accept that person for who they are when you see their blackness. So when you say, I don't see color, that means you don't accept them. You don't accept their blackness. But every white person is responsible to either continue racism or to end racism because they came together and invented racism and passed it down through their families. Like during slavery, when they hung people, they would bring their children out and let the children watch so that when they pass on, the children would come up in that mentality. Generations on and generations on and generations on. It's also, white people are also responsible for racism because racism is basically y'all culture. And I know y'all don't want that and don't like that, but y'all have to do something about that to get rid of that. Because just acting like it was never there is not healing. It make it look like you don't care. So if I can acknowledge and take accountability for what humanity has done, and I can take accountability for what Black women have done, and so you can take accountability for what white people have done. Even though I didn't specifically do it, you didn't specifically do it, but that's who we represent. I represent Black women. I represent humanity. You represent humanity. You represent white people. So it's our duty to look in the mirror and change ourselves and reflect that out. Another example, you know how Adam and Eve did something that nobody else did, but everybody after that, because of them, had carried the sins of Adam and Eve. I mean, that's not my belief, but there's the world's religion, Christianity. So if you believe you carry on the sins of Adam and Eve, how you don't expect you carry on the sins of your ancestors? It's basically the same thing. What Adam and Eve did, when they made that choice, they affected the whole world. When white people came together and invented racism and American slavery, it affected the healthcare system, education system, the economics, the healthcare field. It affected everything. Banking system, the waters, the sky, the history, the TV. It affects everything. The only difference is some pieces of humanity repent because of what Adam and Eve did. They repent. But not a lot of white people are repenting for what their ancestors did. And I know you're not racist or prejudiced or anything, but you have a responsibility. Like Black people have a responsibility to do something. We all have our role. And in this play of humanity, you have been chosen to be a protector of the gods. When you're looking at me, you're looking at your creator. And I'm not saying that out of ego or no, it's just like 1 + 1 adds up to 2. I'm saying it like a fact. And that's really why y'all gotta repent. Because if y'all don't, y'all life gonna keep getting cut short, and y'all been given an extra 1,000 years to repent, and it's ever since Ptolemy Soter entered ancient Egypt, we've been fighting racism and oppression ever since. It's up to all white people to end racism because all white people created racism. My family don't have a racist background either, but yet I fight against it.